Guys, welcome back to another skills workshop with Adrian Bo Troy Malcolm. Episode 31, we are getting straight into it because AB, we are delivering so much content out every single week. Not only are we continuing to do the skills workshop all the way through to Christmas time, we've also started doing webinars, which hopefully you've all been tuning into on a Monday and a Thursday to make sure you've got all the tools, resources, dialogue that you can use out in the field. Now, AB, guess what? We've got about 6 weeks left until the Christmas break. Everyone's going to get a well-earned break, but we're talking today about listings, and the reason why I thought it was really important to talk about listings is there's still an opportunity out there to go and list some phenomenal property and get it sold before the end of the year. The second part of that, let's use the Dr. Fred analogy, which we mentioned a couple of weeks ago. Let's come back in 2019 with our car parked on top of the hill in momentum, where we've got 4, 5, 6 listings that we can see a really successful Q1 in 2019. Hey, listen, your experience, your understanding of the market, what was the best way you ever approached the listing appointment? Because I know you had very distinct and clear goals and objectives you were trying to achieve. Every single time someone would call up and ask for a market appraisal and ask you to go out and list their property.
Yeah, no, thanks for asking, Troy. And the good thing is we're slowly getting through all your questions because we've had a couple come in, one about the listing process and agenda, another one about the ideal day, ideal week, and this will cover both of those. So keep them coming. We will get to all of them. We're slowly making our way through. So firstly, I think the most important thing with listing, Troy, is that initial conversation you have on the phone or email with the client. So either you're doing a piece of prospecting, which is eventuated into making an appointment, or someone has called you because you're an attraction brand, or you've sent out a piece of marketing either digitally or in the post. And most of the industry, unfortunately, the conversation sounds like this. Troy, thanks for your call. I'm really excited about doing an appraisal. I'll see you 3 o'clock Friday. Great. And then normally the agent will turn up unprepared, usually, fumbling around some pre-listing material and usually like 5 minutes late. So that's a lot of the industry, unfortunately. What I recommend and advocate is carve out an extra 8 minutes for that conversation, because the most important initial question that you want to ask that client is, have you made a decision to definitely place your property on the market? Because you need to be able to traffic control whether this meeting is going to be either a market appraisal or a listing appointment. Now, they're two very different appointments. Now, are they both important? Absolutely. Are they both part of your ideal day, which is 2 to 4 hours of prospecting in the morning, because that's your AM energy, and then 2 to 4 face-to-face appointments in the afternoon, because that's that PM energy. And 2 to 4 face appointments in the afternoon, Troy, could either be buyer appointments that are qualified, price alignment meetings with your vendor, it could well be a list role play with one of your colleagues, or then we go to those last two, which is a market appraisal or a listing appointment. Now, the reason I like to traffic control the difference is that a listing appointment is going to take a bit more preparation, is going to involve some information being sent in advance, and a market appraisal is usually just a conversation that's less structured, that may not require information in advance and may not require an actual agenda.
Right.
So let's assume for a moment, Troy, that I've asked the question, you've said, Adrian, yes, I'm definitely putting my property on the market, I'm inviting 3 agents through. The next piece of information I like to identify is removing a couple of obvious obstacles which could get in the way of me listing it at that first appointment, because my goal is to list it at the first appointment. The one obvious one is, Troy, will both title owners be present at the property?
Right.
Oh, actually, it's okay, I'll be here and I can make a decision. So what I would say is, Troy, I find this is a really important appointment. I find that a lot of questions do evolve out of this discussion, and how about we make it Friday at 6 p.m. so you can both be present? How do you feel about that?
Sounds good.
Great, because what I've found, Troy, over the years is I'll have a 90-minute cracker listing presentation, and then I'll ask a closing question, which is usually, is there any reason you cannot provide me with instructions today so I can get started selling for you tomorrow? And they'll say, that sounds great, Adrian, but my partner's not here.
Yeah, right.
So very difficult obstacle to overcome. The second most obvious obstacle is asking that question around, will you be inviting other agents? And what I will try and finesse, if I can, Troy, is be the last agent. Because again, what I've found a very difficult, obvious objection to overcome is asking that closing question, is there any reason you cannot provide me with instructions today so I can get started selling for you tomorrow? And the owner says, well, Adrian, that sounds great, but I'm seeing 3 other agents. I mean, I found, in my experience, and I still find it very difficult to convince that owner not to see those agents, right?
Correct.
So I will try and be the last one. And then I look at asking a brief description on the home, and then I'll also make a statement and ask a question around price and method of sale. So I'll ask Troy, and I'll say to you, I'll be providing you my opinion of value and also my recommended method of sale. However, do you have a preference on private treaty or auction? And what is your general price expectation?
Right.
Okay, so not because I can just turn up and regurgitate that, but one, if they've got a specific challenge with the auction process, I don't want to come in guns a-blazing auction.
Yep.
Doesn't mean I can't discuss auction as one of the options when I get there, but I've seen a lot of agents make this mistake, Troy, where they don't ask the question, they're a one-trick pony around their listing presentation, and all they do is regurgitate the same presentation all over again, and it could be auction, and therefore they haven't even, prior to that, sensed where the owner's up to in terms of method of sale.
Yeah.
Okay? The other thing is on price, you really want to get an idea of where their headspace is at. Now, I used to ask the question directly, what's your opinion of value? And they'd say, you're the expert, you're the professional, that's why you're coming. But as soon as I started prefacing it with, I'll be providing you my opinion of value when I see you. However, what is your general price expectation? And then just be quiet. I find 8 out of 10 times I'm getting a response.
Yeah, right.
So that's what a pre-listing questionnaire sounds like, if you like. The other thing which I will say to the client, Troy, is that I'll be sending some information in advance. Please take time to go through that. One of the documents in that information, Troy, is the McGrath Terms and Conditions, or agency agreement, if you like. And I would say, Troy, if at the end of our meeting you're happy with what I've got to say and you're happy with McGrath as a brand, we're going to start looking at that document, the agency agreement, and we're going to start talking about some dates. Is that okay with you? Great. So I'm planting the seed, because the mistake a lot of agents make is they'll just whip out a legal document without the client ever actually reading it. And then they'll also whip out marketing plans, which I also send in advance, because if I've got a description on the home, I've got a general price range, and I'm an area expert, I should have a very good idea of what type of marketing is involved.
Yeah, right.
And the old version of me, 15 years ago, Troy, was, thanks, I really appreciate you showing my house. I'm going to come back to you with a proposal. And then 48 hours later you'd send a proposal, then hope and pray that they would call you and say, Adrian, guess what, you've got the listing. Like, that's delusional. So I'd rather do all the hard work in advance, send the information in advance, plant the seed around the next step, which is that agency agreement and marketing plan. So that's what that pre-listing questionnaire sounds like. That's the first step.
It's really interesting, Adrian, because over the 25 years that you have been in the number one position in most markets that you've operated in the top 1% of agents around the country, there's a process to everything. And your process actually outpaces the competition. I'm really getting a sense of that. So the question down the barrel to the camera is, guys, what are your 3 marketing campaigns? What's your recommended? What's your essential? What's your premium? And how are you delivering them? Are you sending them then and there to the vendor, potential client, before the appointment? Or are you waiting to do the drum roll? Here's how much it's going to cost you. And my best recommendation is the same as Adrian's, is to send it out before so they get a really clear understanding of how we're going to talk about and get them the premium price.
Absolutely. And at a granular level, Troy, what I'm actually doing is having a conversation with the client on the phone. I'm typing the information into a calendar invite, CCing my EA, and within 8 minutes of my EA receiving that, the pre-listing kit goes out on email to the client straight away.
Is that something that you've always been really conscious of, the urgency of being the first one to hit them and surprise them with that information?
Absolutely. I'll never forget, one of my first listings I got over 20 years ago. It wasn't a pre-list, but it was doing the appraisal. I walked back to the office because I didn't have a car and walked back. This is for an apartment in Maroubra, and dropped the proposal off within 30 minutes. And the owner gave me that listing purely on that basis, right? Right. So that always stuck with me. So the pre-list obviously is nothing revolutionary. We've been talking talking about pre-listings for 20 years. But what I'm suggesting is include the agency agreement, include the Rate My Agent testimonials, include specific tailored marketing plans. So the next step is obviously doing the listing appointment. Now that's very process driven. Everyone's got to have their USP. Everyone's going to have a story around why Adrian Bo, why McGrath, why Troy Malcolm. So that's a process that everyone's going to have their own nuances around. But the most important thing is once you've actually got the listing is to create that set to sell. Okay, right. That's important because especially at the moment, why properties are not aligned is people aren't creating the expectation up front.
Yeah.
So sitting down with the client within moments of the ink drawing on the agency agreement, literally providing them a number of how many people we should get through the open house that Saturday. Now, if your number's 10, let them know. If there's less than 10 groups, guess what? When we meet either on Saturday afternoon, like Peter Chauncey's doing, or on Tuesday morning, like I would normally do, then we've got some data to reflect on. And if we need to alter any of the levers, be it price, presentation, and marketing, we can do that. And the good news is we can let the client know if we're off track, we can very quickly get back on track again. And the same piece of real estate in the same marketplace, the campaign can look very, very different. So that's the important thing.
Adrian, another thing that you've mentioned multiple times when we've spoken about this topic, not only on this, but on our podcast, on a number of training sessions we've done around the group, is you always take your emotion out of that conversation. When you're providing feedback, you're setting this campaign up for success. The information that you're providing is based on what the market is saying about the property. So when we talk about price, presentation, and the marketing, the promotion of the property, you know that one of those key levers would be pricing. So we've had a high number of indicators come through the open for inspections, not a high number of indicators come through the open for inspections, but a high number of clicks online, you know there's a disconnect there. Absolutely. And I know we're slightly deviating away from where we were, but I think it's a really important thing during the expectations meeting to emphasize to the vendor that those three things, pricing, presentation, promotion, they're going to be the three things that we're going to have to talk about every single week, face-to-face, daily on the phone and in our written report.
Absolutely. Well, there's no use talking about listings, Troy, unless we do talk about the set to sell. Because especially at the moment, every piece of stock has to be listed with the right intentions around price, and you need to have some data, some objective data. So it's not subjective coming from an agent, it's not subjective coming from a neighbour, it's not subjective coming from the vendor around price, but from the buyers. And those buyers, you'll be able to sit down with your owner on a Saturday afternoon or a Monday and Tuesday and say, okay, these are the amount of web views we've had. These are the amount of people that have called me in the last 48 hours about your property. Here's the amount of people that have emailed me about your property. Now, let's relate that to a number of physical inspections that came through the open house. Are we on track, yes or no? If the answer is no, great. What can we do to get back on track? Good news is there's plenty of things we can do. One, we can align the price. Two, we can increase the promotion or the marketing of the property. Three, we can improve on the presentation. And very quickly, we can get back on track.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, that's invaluable. Adrian, thank you so much for your time. Hey, what did you think? Send us through your feedback to both Adrian and myself via our email addresses. The other thing I want to mention, Adrian, and I want to have this as a bit of a challenge, I want a few of you guys, if you can, if not all of you, to send through what's your goal leading into 2019. I think we would love to get a kick out of that. Yeah. How many listings are you trying to bring on for auction campaigns or even just for sales campaigns in February and March next year? Because we know those that are most successful right now are going to see the rest of the results play dividends towards the tail end of the financial year next year. Guys, back next Friday. Keep an eye out for not only our podcast, but also the skills workshop every single Friday and the webinars we're delivering. We want to make sure that these tools are absolutely useful to you out in the field every single week. Enjoy the weekend of selling. Looking forward to seeing you all again next week.
Thank you.